Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens as Leeds United find themselves going through in the FA Cup to the 5th round, having beaten Birmingham City on penalties. I do think there's a lot to talk about in this game. I really do. We saw a lot of players that we haven't seen really for a long time at Leeds United, and they've been in and out of the team. There was a lot of performances. I don't think, truthfully, the overall performance was good in truth, and I think we made a very much hard work of the game, but we do get the win and we do go into the 5th round of the FA Cup now. And you're getting to the point now in the FA Cup where I think the next round, and look, we'll talk about this at probably a later date, but I think you're getting to the point now with the FA Cup where you have to start taking it kind of seriously, because we are into the 3rd round now, into the 5th round, should I say. We are, I think it's into the last 32 now. So we're what, 2 wins away or 3 wins away from actually getting to Wembley. So it's starting to become more a priority, the FA Cup now. And it was important that we got through today, because we've said that the FA Cup gives opportunities for players who are not currently in the 11 to get chances to play, because it's important that you've got other competitions like this. And then of course, if players that are in the starting 11 at this moment in time go into the 11, who are in this sort of backup team and going to the 11, they need to be fresh, and obviously playing in the FA Cup allows them to get this game time, and it was important. However, as I said, I don't think it was a standout game from Leeds United. I actually think we were quite lucky. I know we conceded right at the end and people go, that was unlucky, because obviously it was a James Justin deflected shot, but truthfully it wasn't a vintage Leeds United at all, was it? We were quite off it. There was a number of poor performances, and actually quite a few players who I was hoping would play well in this game didn't play particularly well. I thought there was quite a lot of bad performances out there, and I don't think many players have made a case really to find themselves into the starting 11 going forward. Helping Hut says, tough game, great win away. Yeah, look, as I said, I actually think Birmingham, fair play to them. I thought they were really good. I thought they were well up for it. The fans were well up for it. The ground was rocking. It was a proper cup tie. And I think you've seen a lot over the weekend, the way that sort of FA Cup's been diluted over the last sort of 10 years and how sort of low-level people, sort of managers deem the FA Cup to be now. But I thought it was a bit of a throwback game today, because I actually thought that they looked well up for the game. And I think that we actually probably didn't match their intensity. And I think part of our issue and from our sort of core problems in the game with the fact we didn't pick up second balls very well. We didn't recover possession in anywhere where you'd expect Leeds United to do. And I do think part of it as well is, obviously we know that, look, the league is naturally the most important. And I think that the players don't want to get injured, obviously, for the league games. So I think we did like that kind of intensity, but I do think that does actually come a bit from the fact that players are not going full throttle into tackles because they don't want to miss out playing in the Premier League and getting injured in the FA Cup. Like, I think you saw DCL even jump out of a few tackles, and I kind of, even though I never want to see that in a Leeds shirt, I kind of understand it, because the league is the categorically the priority, which is why if it wasn't, then DCL would have started the game, and I think we're all quite aware of that. I actually thought, to be honest, when you looked at the starting 11 to start with, it was kind of stronger than I expected. I thought Goodmanson now having to play 120 minutes in that game, running up and down the line, is quite a worrying situation. As Andy rightly mentions as well, Okafor did pick up that knock, and truthfully, with the Okafor situation, I do remember it, but it was about on the 70th minute, he took off Nmecha and brought on Perot. And at that point, if I'm being honest, I probably thought he should have brought Okafor off. Me and my brother were talking about it watching the game. We went, surely he'll do Okafor now for Perot, and he didn't, and he did sort of Nmecha for Perot. Now, look, I don't want to blame that on Farke that he got injured because of that, because obviously decision making and things can happen. He wasn't expecting him to get injured. But truthfully, if I was managing the team, which obviously I don't do, then naturally that's the sub I probably would have made, if I'm being honest. Stephen says, unfortunately, the new boys didn't help themselves, and shame we had to bring on big boys to get us through. Cool going through on pens though. Yeah, it is, because I think we've been so bad on penalties for so long now. It feels like every penalty shootout win we lose, and that's probably not the case, but it kind of feels like that's the case. And obviously we had that horror show of a penalty shootout against Sheffield Wednesday, didn't we, as well, Stephen? So it's nice to have that balance really, and in this game obviously go through on penalty shootouts. And also quite a good thing for Perry as well, obviously making them one really good save in the game, but also making that really good penalty save as well from them. Gavin says 2 defeats in 14. Looks like I've lost Okafor now. Where was Dan James? I don't know. There's been a lot of talk about Dan James, aren't there, Gavin? I don't quite know what the situation is going to be with Dan James. You'd imagine it's injury, but it could be personal issues. Anything could be going on. But you'd imagine if he's been left out of the squad, I don't think he'd have been left out of the squad for selection issues. I think he'll have been left out of the squad because something's happened. If that's an injury, as I said, family issues, maybe his wife's having a child. I don't know what could be going on, but there is obviously obviously something which I think will just come out in the sort of in the press work after the game, I guess. But yeah, I mean, as I said, truthfully, to sort of like finish the sort of intro as much, it was a game where I thought we were hanging on for majority of it. I didn't think we deserved to be up in the game. I thought we were terrible in the first half, and I thought we were pretty terrible in the second half. I didn't think we got a grip to it. I actually thought probably in extra time, especially maybe the last 5 or 10 minutes, we probably actually should have gone on and won the game. I thought actually, to be fair, we were in the last sort of 10 minutes, we had a number of chances. I think Calvert-Lewin should have slipped in Perot for a tap in at the last minute. Somebody else would have slipped in somebody else. I can't remember exactly who the exact link-ups were, but right at the end, in the last sort of few minutes, we did have loads of chances, and we should have killed the game at that point. But I thought, as we talked about, and I think a lot of you mentioned this, a lot of the players that, as I said, we would hope were going to have a good game in this game to try to convince Daniel Farke that he's wrong and why they should be in the team, just didn't have good games. I'm looking at the likes of Sean Longstaff. I thought he was terrible today. His passing was just absolutely awful. I thought Nmecha was pretty awful, if I'm being honest. Nonto I thought was awful. Perot, when he came on, was awful. I thought Bornau did all right at the back, to be fair to him, and I actually thought them two were probably two of our shining lights. I know, obviously, you've said today that nobody impressed you. You've said, Tristan, that no one impressed you other than Nmecha, Amson, and Bogle. I can get on board with that, and I think they were some of the better performers in a really poor level performance. I actually would put Biol in there. For me, Biol was man of the match today. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I think the difference between Bornau and Biol, and you could analyse it today in multiple parts, is that Bornau looks like he does a load of good things because he's always out of position. So then he ends up doing last-minute tackles and last-minute slide tackles, and it looks like he's really good defender. But it's usually because he's out of position, in truth. Whereas I think it's kind of different with Biol. Biol's always in his positional sense defensively. He's outstanding. It's so good. He's always in the right spot, and I think that makes a huge difference for him. And I think he looks always really calm, and because his positional stats is so good, he's always calm and he's always sweeping stuff up. And I actually thought, as I said, in a really bad team where we couldn't string 5 passes together today, or a few passes together today, I actually think Biol was a standing light. I thought he was really good. I do think the game improved second half when Ampadu came on, but I don't think we were. I think we were marginally better. I don't think it was like a night and day swing, if I'm being honest. I didn't think it was at all. Today showed the influence of Ampadu. Look, it does, and Ampadu's a huge player for us. Andy, you are right to say that, and I've always said that Ampadu's sort of leadership skills are something massively underrated, in my opinion. And it's something that you can't watch it and quantify it by the way that they play, but you can just somehow it's so obvious. Like if you watch it, that how much influence he has on the team in terms of the way he talks to players and how calm he always looks in possession and that sort of thing. Look, there's improvements that Ampadu can make to his game for sure, but he's a massively important player for us. He really is. Mark says, our decision making again, though, and end of extra time would have saved going to pens. 49ers need to invest in the summer as our second string not good enough. Yeah, I think that's fair, mate. I think that's fair. And I said but part of it as well, Mark, is that it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I don't want to throw a lot of these players under the bus. Like, you've probably not heard me talk about Buonanotte yet, and we will talk about Buonanotte because there's definitely a conversation to be had there. But I don't really want to throw, truthfully, the likes of Tanaka's and Longstaffs and Perots and all these players under the bus because they haven't had minutes. And when you're not fresh, it's so difficult to get into the game, and especially a game like that where they were well up for it and playing at a really high intensity. If you're just slightly off it by 5%, you're struggling games like that. And I know people go, yeah, but this is Birmingham, Scott. I thought they were really good today, Birmingham. I didn't think they were poor at all. But if we do talk about Buonanotte, look, there will be it now. I think we're going to have an issue now with Buonanotte in terms of I'm not really sure where this transfer is going to go for us now, because he's had his chance today. It was a disaster, if we're being totally honest. I'm not surprised it was a disaster, actually. Maybe I thought when as soon as the game started playing and you saw the intensity they were playing with and that solace in midfield for them, I thought was fantastic. I think you did see Buonanotte really struggle. I thought if it was a game where we just dominated the ball and we had like 60-70% possession and it was all us going forward and they were just sat in a low block, maybe to suit Buonanotte, could get on the ball, plays, passes, that sort of thing. But he never got a chance to do that, and they never let him have a moment's rest in the first half. But you've got to remember with Buonanotte, he played last season for Leicester. He started the season, he was in Cooper's plans, Steve Cooper's plans. Steve Cooper then left the football club. Then they brought in Van Nistelrooy, and he basically didn't play from then till the end of the season, hardly at all. So he hadn't played for the second half of last season. We know he didn't play basically at all for Chelsea in the first half of this season. So he's basically gone 12 months now without any football, and now we've thrown him straight into a sort of a high hostile environment, which the Birmingham fans made it really aggressive today, and really it was a really good atmosphere at Birmingham actually, especially for a cup game. And he was just way off it. Again, I can understand that a bit, because this is kind of what you'd expect when someone who hasn't played football for 12 months, he's not going to come in and light the game up. But the only concern I've got with this signing, I probably didn't think of it at the time, and I probably should have done in truth, is now this has happened, Farke won't trust him, will he now? And I do get it, because you've got to do it. It's got to be on merit, and they've got to show good performances to be allowed to play in the team. But we've now got to, and truthfully, we're not in a position where we're a charity at the moment. Now, we've said this before about Nmecha, but it's relevant to Buonanotte now as well, with his performance levels. Where, although I do think there's a good player in Buonanotte, and I do think there is a potential that he could be a fantastic player for us, we don't really have a situation where we're really solid mid-table in the Premier League. Say we're on like 36 points like Sunderland are, and you can bed them in, and you can have a few weeks where they play poorly, because you can just slowly bring them into the team. We don't have that luxury, because every game's so important in the Premier League. So I'm looking at it now going, I don't really see when Buonanotte is now going to feature for Leeds, if I'm being honest. I think the only times you're going to see him is maybe we play Burnley at home, Wolves at home, games like this, and maybe you can bring him on in them games if they're sat in a deep block like they did, like Wolves recently against Forest, and you need someone to pick a pass. Maybe you could bring Buonanotte on then and just see what happens. But it's probably the same for Gnonto as well. Again, I don't think he was great, and I think that, to be fair, the experiment of him at sort of right wing back was a bit of a disaster today, and truthfully I think probably a lot of us expected that to happen. He's a right winger by trade, or a left winger. He's never a right wing back in a million years, but we don't really play with wingers, do we, in the current climate and in the current system, so he was always really going to struggle, I think. But he didn't play well, whereas I think when you look at the Derby game in comparison, I thought in that game Perot played well, I thought Tanaka played well, I thought Gnonto played well, I thought all these players played well. Again, you just didn't see that. You just didn't see that today at all. And again, like with Buonanotte, you probably could say similar about Gnonto. I'm struggling now at times when he's going to play many minutes. It'd be nice if he played well today, especially with Okafor picking up that injury now that we think he has, because maybe Gnonto could have been that player that plays off Dominic Calvert-Lewin and plays the Okafor role. He's obviously the one with that you'd expect that could do that maybe best in the squad. But because he's played the way he has today, again, I don't really see that happening. Truthfully, though, if I'm being honest, when we got to half-time, people are going to be very surprised at what I'm about to say, and it's nothing about this player at all. But my sub would have been, I thought the sub was wrong. I would have left Buonanotte on and given him, and continued to give him a go, because it is the cup, and truthfully, had he absolutely stunk it out for the next sort of till maybe 60th, 70th minute, it probably would have been worth it to keep giving him a go, in my opinion, to see if he can just spark something in his game so he could be used in further games. And I would have actually brought off James Justin at half-time. And it wasn't because Justin was playing badly, but for me, when Biol and Bornau were doing fine at the back, they were as a back two, and then I'd have gone to a back four then. And I said I would have brought Justin off personally for like a Gruever and Ampadu midfield like he did. That's what I would have done. Just to go back to a back four and hopefully keep some more of the attacking players on. Hopefully, as I said, ideally in games like this, almost play them into form. And I think he tried that with Longstaff. I mean, he kept him on all game, and did he make a good pass all game? I mean, crikey. Wembley and survival, I'll take that match on together, says Jack. Yeah, well, nice to see you in the chat, Jack. And look, mate, you never know now. We're getting to a point with the FA Cup, aren't we, where you almost want to maybe start giving it a bit more priority, but I'll have to wait and see, really. See who we get drawn against, I guess. Tristan says Buonanotte and JJ were the worst performers, in my opinion. I thought Justin was actually okay, but okay. Facundo was bullied physically and looked overwhelmed. James Justin kept giving corners away, lost his man several times due to him slipping. Look, he did make a few mistakes in the game, but I don't think he was awful. I didn't think he was one of our worst performers, if I'm being honest. Andy says Longstaff just needs minutes. In pre-season, he looked terrible. But with games, he will be so much better. Yeah, I agree, Andy. But at the moment, the problem you've got with your Longstaff for me is that you've got Ampadu and Gruev, who are both playing really well at this moment. And we don't have time really to embed these other players. And obviously we've got Stack coming back as well that you'd expect. So at Villa away, realistically, it is going to be Ampadu, Gruev and Stack in it. That's the midfield it's going to be, and Longstaff won't play. And this is where Longstaff, you would hope, probably had a good game today. And because maybe I think a lot of people see the progression of this midfield being sort of Ampadu, Longstaff and Stack, and they probably want Gruev out of there. But Gruev's just playing better than Longstaff at the moment, and I think we've got to accept that. And as I said, like we said with Buonanotte, like we said with Tanaka, I'll die on this hill. we're not a charity, and you can't, unfortunately, we don't have time, and it's too important when we're in too much of a precarious position in the league to just constantly give players minutes, which is why today was a good opportunity for these players, because it's in a competition that's not as bad. Gavin says, Perry won it for us today. Pleased for him. Yeah, I am pleased with Perry. I think there will be shouts now for him to be the starting keeper for the rest of the season. I don't really agree with that, Gavin. I'm not saying that you're saying that, because that's not what your comment was saying, but I don't feel that we should now stick with Perry as our number one. I think there was quite a comment that went quite viral on Twitter, actually, and I saw it at half-time, that was, Perry at his best is better than Darlow at his best, but Perry at his worst is worse than Darlow at his worst, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think Perry's potentially got a higher ceiling than Darlow, but I think he's more prone to errors at the same time. And for a keeper, it's different to other positions. Maybe you could deal with that as a striker in terms of a different way. But with goalkeepers, you want a safe, steady pair of hands, and I think that's what Darlow gives you. I don't think he's an unbelievable shot stopper. We've said this 100 times, and for me in the summer, again, I'm still looking at bringing a new goalkeeper in. But to be fair, Perry got his chance today, and a lot of others didn't stand up to the test of the game. But actually, I do feel that Perry did well today. He made a fantastic save in the first half with Stansfield. He also made a few other decent saves as well. I don't think he was as... his kicking's awful, but I don't think his all-round game was as bad as it's been, and decision-making sometimes has been as bad as it's been. So he made an important penalty save as well. So Perry deserves credit. He does deserve credit for today. As I said, for me though, I'd still be sticking with Darlow. Not because I think he's the answer long-term. I just think he's more of the answer this season, truthfully. Tristan says, could it just be Leeds being Leeds and turn up to prime Barca at night, but Championship Leeds at lunchtime kickoffs? Potentially, mate, but we played Derby away, and that was a half-12 kickoff, and we actually played really well in that game. So it's just one of them times. As I said, if I'm being honest with you all, I was quite surprised at the level of Birmingham. I was really impressed with Birmingham today. And it's not about taking it off Leeds and saying, oh, we were bad because of Birmingham being so good. But there is part of that. I thought Birmingham were really good today, and fair play to them. They put on a really good show. I thought they've got some really talented players. And I think, actually, had they had a bit more sort of composure in the final third, I actually think they'd have beat us today. But they just, at times, they were very scruffy in the final third, weren't they? They missed a lot of opportunities. I mean, they should have won it in the last kick of the game in normal time, didn't they? And they missed it. And Beale obviously did a fantastic block. But truthfully, I was impressed with Birmingham. And I was actually impressed with their fans as well. I thought they were well up for the game. And it was actually bouncing as well, which I was not expecting, if I'm being honest. So fair play to them. Fair play, but they are out. Bornow says, AAD says, Bornow is our answer to Wout Faze. Look, Bornow, as I said, he was good today. It's probably one of his better performances, and he was much better today than he was against Derby. I still wonder about his positional sense. I think his positional sense is kind of a bit all over the place. I don't think he's the solid defender. And as I said, if you watch Beale and you watch Bornow today, it's so obvious that Beale's just like a miles better centre-half than him. And I know everyone thinks this anyway, but he's just always in control of where he is. He's always in the right positions. He's reading of the game. He's miles better. And his football brain is just miles better than Bornow. Bornow's okay, and he can do a job, and physically he's fine. But he's never going to be a good player, really. He's never going to be like a Premier League. He's not. I don't see Bornow's progression being he improves and improves and improves. I don't see that with him. I think we're kind of hitting his ceiling now. Whereas Beale, I think, I look at him and think he, in the middle of a back three, he's as good as you're going to get, really. I think he's fantastic, Beale. I really do. I think he's absolutely fantastic. JJB says, last few games when Tanaka's played, I think he's looked poor. Passes have been crap, and he can't get anything going. What do you think? Yeah, look, Tanaka's a bit of a problem in it. I think with Tanaka, truthfully, and Nonto, I think, is in this category as well. I feel like we all feel like we're heading to a certain outcome with them players, if I'm being honest. And I don't think, look, they are two of Leeds United's favourite players in the squad. I think the Leeds fans love them players. But it does feel like we're kind of coming a bit to I don't know, it feels kind of like we're coming to a conclusion with them two. They've just not played well for a while, I don't think. I think that the last time they played well was the Derby game. I thought they were both really good in that game. But obviously, people remember, and JJB, you're right, that obviously against Everton, he was absolutely awful when he came on. And I don't think he was particularly great today. I think he's obviously missing out because of minutes. But as I said, we're not a charity, and we can't play these players just to give them minutes so they improve, because truthfully, you've got to reward players that are playing well now. And as I said, the likes of a Gruev, even though I think probably Tanaka's got a higher ceiling, I really don't think that he's playing as well as a Gruev is, if I'm being honest. And maybe Tanaka was more suited to the Championship, where it's a bit slower, and maybe Gruev's more suited to the Premier League, where where the game maybe suits him more, and the way we're trying to play in games is more beneficial to his skill set. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. The one thing I would say about today, and I did feel we were being overrun in midfield a lot. As I keep mentioning, but I thought that Zolis had a really good game for them. But I actually felt in the first half, our balance was kind of completely off. I didn't think our balance was right at all in the first half, which is why I wanted to bring an Ampadu or Gruev on, because I kind of felt in the first half a bit that we had too many technical players on. We didn't have enough runners in there. Like, I looked through the team and you had Buenanotte on, you had Nonto there, you had Okafor there, you had Tanaka in the midfield. And we only had Longstaff really in the middle of the park, who is someone who was a runner, and he's someone who's going to intercept the ball and he's good on the defensive side of his game. That's the only player we had on there, and I felt the balance was slightly off in the first half, and I think that's why we got pretty much dominated in the first half, because I just felt that we had nothing. I don't think we had anything really in the middle of the park in terms of a defensive capacity that was helping us, and I did feel like the balance was kind of off, if I'm being honest. Agreed. I could see them getting promoted in a year or so. Yeah, I think so. I think Birmingham, maybe it's not going to be this year for them, and maybe they do need a sprinkle of quality, but I was genuinely really impressed with them. I'm not just saying that to sort of like hide away from maybe Leeds' performance. I was actually really impressed. It's me and my dad and brother all thought the same about Birmingham. They were well up for it today, and they put in a really good showing, to be honest. And truthfully, as I said, if they had a bit more quality in certain moments and certain areas, because they did get into better areas than today, they just lacked that extra bit of quality to sort of finish the game off. And I think the reason we ended up in extra time in the first place is because we had that really good opportunity with Nmecha. And what a goal, by the way, Nmecha! But it was the only sort of moment we had. In truth, we didn't have loads of moments. I didn't feel like we did more in extra time, and we did more maybe later in the game. But up until that Nmecha goal, it was literally all Birmingham. But that's the difference in quality. We have one chance, and Nmecha fires it into the back of the net, and they had a number of opportunities, and they just couldn't finish it at all. And shout out to Nmecha, by the way, because he's been a good signing now. I actually wonder with Nmecha, and I didn't think I'd be saying this actually at the start of the season. He's a fantastic ball striker. He really is a fantastic ball striker. In fact, he might be the best ball striker we've got in the team. The way he hits the ball, we saw it, and we talked on this channel for a while about this. Like, if you look at his penalty against Chelsea, or we're talking about his strike away at Forest, that was fantastic. His strike today, he has got a really good shot on him. For me, he's got a better technique than Calvert-Lewin, actually. The thing that lets, for me, Nmecha down in comparison to Calvert-Lewin is that hold-up play. I thought at the start of the season he was going to be quite good at hold-up play, because we watched him against Newcastle and he was really good. Again today, I thought Clara had him, to be honest, at the back for them. I thought he bullied him, and I know Nmecha scored, and fair play to him, and that's kind of his job at the end of the day, and I get that. But I don't think he helped with the link-up of the play that well. I didn't think he held the ball up. But Nmecha does a lot where the ball goes up to him, and he sort of, rather than bringing people into play and being strong, he just falls to the floor. Like, he ends up falling almost back on himself. So he's like trying to hold it up like this, and he falls just back on himself from this position. And we see that a lot with him, and he never wins fouls, and I think that's what he's trying to get. But he's got to be stronger. He's got to stay on his feet, be stronger, and hold the ball up, because he's not good at that. He's a decent finisher, Nmecha, but he ain't good at that. He really ain't. Nmecha has a habit of getting important goals. He does, Gavin. And look, truthfully, when we looked in the summer business, and we've talked about it a number of times, but we've brought DCL in and we brought Nmecha in, and between them now, they were both free transfers. In all competitions, they've got 17 goals. It's not bad, that. It's not bad at all. If someone had said that to me, that we've been halfway through February and they'd have had 17 goals between them, I'd have been absolutely laughing your head off, thinking you were talking absolute nonsense. Tristan says, well, all I can say is that we did better than Burnley. We did, and we're through, and they obviously lost to Mansfield. So, you know. Ruben says, thoughts on Buenanotte? We kind of touched on it, Ruben, a bit. But basically, mate, truthfully, I don't kind of... He was bad, wasn't he? He was awful in the game. But I don't really want to fly into these players, because I don't think it helps, truthfully, anyway. But I also just think, if you look at his game time that he's had, he hasn't really played football for about a year now. He didn't play the second half of the season for Leicester because they changed coach and when Van Nistelrooy came in. And then at that point, obviously, he wasn't playing then because he was brought in for Steve Cooper. And then this season, he went to Chelsea, didn't play there. So I kind of thought, when we talked about January and sort of talked about the players that we should be bringing in, we talked about players that are going to be ready-made and ready to go straight away. And I don't think Buenanotte will be that anymore. From what I've seen now, he's not. He just isn't ready to go. Is it? He needs embedding. He needs game time. He needs bad performances to play him, and we're probably not going to be able to offer him that. So that might look like a bit of a disaster. Look, I hope I'm wrong, and I was really happy with the Buenanotte sign. I do think he's a really talented footballer. And it's a shame, actually, with the way Birmingham players, I said, that they weren't in a low block, because had they been in a low block, he could have got on the ball. They wouldn't have been physical in the midfield, because the way the game would have been set up, and it might have suited him more. But the way it was a really physical game, and he just couldn't go up with it at all, could he? But as I said, he hasn't played much. But we're not a charity, as I said. I keep saying, and that's kind of how it is, really. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up the video there, everybody. Thanks for watching. As always, a bit of a longer match reaction today, but I do think there was a lot to talk about in the game because, as I said, we saw a lot of players for the first time. But as an overarching feeling, look, fantastic to get through into the next round of the Cup. I think we can have a conversation when we get into that game because, as Matt says, we are now 2 wins away from Wembley. About sort of where we go from here, and do we go in a stronger position and go maybe higher strength in them games now? I think that's something for open to debate. But important, nice we got through, and I think it's a shame that players didn't perform who probably wanted to do that, who were sort of the fringe players. But we're through, and that's kind of the overarching feeling. Nice to win on penalties as well, and nice that Nmecha is going to keep scoring as well. That's also important for us. So look, definitely a positive day. Slightly shame about performance because I actually don't think the improvements improved massively when we brought on the first teamers either as well. But look. That we are where we are. We're doing well. We're still in the Cup, and truthfully, it's a good day to be a Leeds fan. So let's keep it up. Andy says Birmingham kit was impressive. It was. I was impressed with. I don't have much other than that. For me, they fall to the floor a bit too much, Birmingham. But other than that, everything else with them, I generally was really impressed with them, and fair play to them. They are a proper club out there, and you saw that today, I think, with the way that they performed. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there, as I said. If you have just joined, because I've just seen a few have just joined, feel free to go back. There's another sort of 25 or so minutes of this conversation where we talk all about the game. And other than that, though, I will see you all later, everybody. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. Bye for